Welcome back to the Strong Family Project podcast. I'm Joe, joined by Mel.
Welcome back to the Strong Family Project podcast, where we guide you on the path to raising confident, independent, and resilient children in a strong family environment.
I have to do my hosting duty and remind you that if you find this podcast helpful, please share it with one person. Today we have a major topic on the ability to solve problems. In season 1, we chatted on how to teach anyone anything. It was a simple formula. They watch you do something. You watch them do something. They do it independently. And the length of that time is going to be different based on the task. If it's laundry, they watch you do it and assist. You watch them do it and assist, and then you remove yourself from the room. That could be a 1-week process, could be a couple-month process, depending on the volume of laundry in your household. And then what happens if something is off? How can they solve problems without always relying on you to bail them out? And how do you avoid them becoming or giving them that learned dependence on other people to solve their problems? It starts very young, but we see it so much in adults. I've been able to work with so many business people, so many employees. So many of them have been great, but they've struggled with this as adults. And it starts in childhood, and they haven't been given a framework to actually solve problems themselves. And so we're going to talk about that today. Before we get into it, Mel, let's hit our question of the week, because these are only one episode a week now. What event over the summer are you looking forward to? That's my question to you.
Event. I don't have a lot of plans yet. I suppose what I look forward to the most is taking some kind of a day trip like in Colorado that we haven't been to yet. Because there's so much of the state we haven't even ventured to see yet. So I look forward to at least taking one day trip or one quick overnight that goes somewhere like maybe Crested Butte, or like I'd love to go to Ouray. That's a little further away, but something we haven't seen yet in the state we have moved to.
Excellent. That sounds like a good idea. Should we share with the listeners our arrangement for you to get back to work?
Sure.
Because I think this can help out families. I struggle with planning vacations and trips and events. Part of it is I just don't like the logistics and being married to a certain date out in the future, because I have a lot going on and other things may come up. I love flexibility in life. I love freedom and flexibility. And so when I schedule something that's like a couple weeks, that feels like it's almost a trap. I can't think of I can't do anything during that week. It's like almost not worth it to plan that far in advance. But Mel's got a part-time job. And the reason why Mel got a part-time job is it's the right time of life with our kids. Their middle's moving up to middle school, so she's not going to be volunteering in the class anymore like she was. Our youngest is off to first grade.
Yep. So I'll be focusing more on just his classroom versus his and the other one that was in that same school.
And a cool opportunity arose where she's able to work with me at the company that I do consulting for. And when we chatted about it, not that she really needs to work, but number one, we like working together. We worked together for 15 years with our company in the gyms. We worked together in our rental management, our short-term rental business. And the agreement was that I need to get over myself with planning things out in advance. And I need to get over myself with the scarcity mindset on vacations. We never went on like big flying vacations. It was just too much. I had 3 siblings. Our parents, there was 6 of us. Like, to fly 6 people somewhere is, I think it's expensive. And then you got to get the hotel. And how are you going to get around? A rental car. Like, all these things get on top of me. I just don't like to think about it. So we came up with an arrangement that Mel will take half of her wages and it completely goes towards family vacations. How do you feel about that, Mel?
I feel great about that. I like, first of all, my favorite part about it is that you made that leap and that you gave that incentive over, like, about the job, because I really, to take it back a minute, like, I'm so used to doing things to support you. That's how our system works. That's why I did the books and the payroll and all that for the gyms, because I felt like the benefit for me is I get to stay home with the kids, but I'm still helping you run the gym so that things can go smoothly. And this was your own realization that this is something you struggle with feeling like finances should go towards vacations, or that they should be pre-planned and not stress about that. So this is a side story, but I think it's worth it. I was talking to one of my new coworkers this morning, and he gave me a little background on like how he got to where he was. And the question that he kept asking himself was, how do I help more people? What direction can I go in my career that helps more people? And then when it was my turn to explain where I'm at, my question is, how can I help Joe? And that, I know that doesn't necessarily work for every family, and that's fine. But for us, the goals we had in mind to be able to stay home with the kids, it's really has been, how can I be a support system for you? And this job fulfills that again, but also it's a more fun job. I'm going to enjoy it. And I really like working with these people. You've mentioned Vince on the podcast. Of course, he's my boss now, and I'm excited to work with him and make an impact, especially given my experience as the wife of a gym owner. But all that is to say that I love that you made that connection. And I never would have thought, let me take this job so we have vacation money. That was really great. And it's going to push our family forward.
The thing is, it's not even about the vacation money. I could make $100 million a year and I still wouldn't want to. Like, I've just been trained over the last 20 years to do as much as I can to bring as much income to the family as possible. It's always been the mindset. When I was teaching high school, I had 2 home teaching students that I'd go meet in the library on the weekend. I was coaching 3 sports and running a gym on the side. All to, did we need an extra $4,000 or $5,000? I don't know. We're just going to play it safe, and I'm going to try to make as much money as possible whenever the opportunity arises. And I got so stuck in that mindset. It's not even about the money. It's about the mindset of saying, all right, this portion of this will go towards this account regardless, which is vacations and experiences. I'm going to throw experiences in there because it could be something local that we want to do. It's not we have to go fly somewhere and create this big experience, but it could be easily a day trip, not worry about things. And Mel will kind of have management over that account where it goes towards creating family experiences, and just having that set aside versus me just making as much as I possible to bring income to the family helps with our family mindset. So perhaps there's some info in there to help people out. It's almost separated out, like this fund is for this thing. Like, we've got all of our bases covered every month, and it doesn't have to be the same situation. We're going to put $100 into this experience account, $500, $1,000, whatever, and hold yourself accountable to actually using it versus maybe later. I'm never going to find a good time because I know myself. I'm just, it's too much. Let's do it next year.
I think there's 2 things to consider there, though. One is that you had a personal realization that you're not good at X. You're not good at thinking about the logistics of vacations and thinking about how much money it may cost. So I think it's important in whatever you're going through that you have some personal realization. Out of that comes the growth. So once you recognize that, and then this opportunity arose to solve, we're going to be talking about problem solving. To solve that problem, we made a plan. And the plan was, okay, I'll take this job. It's going to fit into my schedule because I'm not going to be giving up the way I want to help volunteering at the school and things like that. And that was well thought out. But we had that personal realization, and then we made a plan to get it to work.
It's not really about the money. It's about our organizational structure had a flaw. My mindset had a flaw, and we had to create something around it versus just, get over it.
Yeah.
And so we figured it out. Speaking of problem solving, would you like to get into today's topic, or do you have a question yourself?
I want to get into it because I feel like this is a good segue.
Get me ranting on problem solving all the time, Mel. So problem solving is a critical life skill, and it goes hand in hand, unfortunately not always, with problem identification. So it's solving the right problems, not just solving problems. So in the workforce, I see a lot of people that are very busy, but they're not efficient. They're solving random problems like, how do we get the water cooler refilled in the office, and not how do I get my next client so that the company grows and my family my family gets more income and all that. So they're still using their mental resources to solve something. That's not always the right thing. Now, that could be a whole separate topic, but I'm just throwing that caveat in the beginning that if there is an issue that arises, make sure to ask yourself, does this need to be solved? Is this the problem? With our physical body, there's a mindset. Let's say my knee hurts. It's typically not my knee that's screwed up. You have to look upstream. Is my quad tight? Is my glute tight? Is something wrong with my hip? Am I sitting too long that is causing tension on my knee? Or look downstream. Do I lack ankle mobility? Are my calves too tight? Are those things causing the issue that is showing itself in my knee? So if a kid is acting out in school, you don't say, all right, You don't initially say, let me teach you how to act in school. It's what is causing you to act out in school, and because that is the symptom of a bigger issue. So go through that process to identify, am I solving what's really important, or am I just being busy?
Yeah, I think it's a mindset thing where problems don't just exist on their own. They are, I would say, almost all the time influenced by something. And those are really good examples. Because at school, let's say a kid has a hitting behavior. You don't just necessarily address just how to not hit. It's like something is causing him to then want to do this. So it's really important to ask that question, get to the root of what the actual problem is. And it's almost like you're trying to just cover up symptoms and not actually go to the root of the problem.
So let me give you the 3-step formula right here. So you have it. And I would write this down. When you're faced with a problem, ask yourself these 3 questions. Number 1, what can I do about it? Number 2, who has solved this that I can ask about it? And number 3, who has written about it that I could learn how to solve it by reading on it? So what can I do? If your answer is, I don't know, then you go to the next step. Who has solved this that who has had to deal with something similar as another parent that I can ask on what they did in this scenario? And if I can't think of someone, what's a trusted resource where I can research and read on it? And that gets you thinking much deeper than, I'm not sure if I can do anything about it. It just is what it is. There are 2 other deeper steps to solving a problem. Usually we stop at that first one, and then we just dump the problem on somebody else.
And also, I think involved in that is we're trying to get, these questions are important because it skips you ahead to the actual solving of the problem or tactical things of how you can tackle it versus just complaining about the problem. Because I think a lot of people get stuck in complaining, and I think that there is a place for that, but then you have to move on to the what's the problem here and then move on to solving. And sometimes, like with kids, they're complaining about something. You might say something, let's move on to try to solve this. And maybe they're not ready yet. So you do have to feel that out. Maybe there needs to be calmer emotions. Because, like, I was dealing with something frustrating earlier. I'm trying to learn some new systems of like computer stuff that I've never done before. And I start to get flustered. And then what I really need to do, and I actually took my earbuds out and tossed, had a little mini hissy fit.
Should really have.
It's just, this is like stretching me. So what I realized though is I really should have just said, listen, I got to take a 5-minute break and walk away, because sometimes you do need to clear your mind, but that doesn't necessarily have to be complaining. It might have to be take a break, take some deep breaths, walk around for a few minutes, go outside. There needs to be that moment where you are able to put yourself in the right mindset to consider problem solving.
Now, I don't want to conflate too much because I've talked on too many levels. The coworkers example, us example, walking away, Mel's hissy fit, tremendous hissy fit, and lasted like 3 seconds. And then us teaching problem solving with kids. Those are different things. So I don't want to conflate them all into one big thing. I want to give you a statement to help you along the path of what Mel's talking about, which is, are they ready to solve the problem? Number 1, ask yourself that before you get into the dialogue. They seem receptive. You can usually tell by body language. If you don't know, ask, would you like to solve this problem, or do you want to continue having it?
Yeah.
If you fight hard enough to have your problems, you get to keep them. That is a statement our kids know, and that's a statement I have to use with a lot of adults. They want to complain. I'm trying not to cuss and go on a rant about this. They want to complain about the same problems they've had for decades. They don't want to solve the problem. They want the dopamine release of someone telling them, oh, sorry you have that problem, and they get a little feel good and no action after it to actually solve the problem. Now, I lean too much on the other side. I realize I don't want to talk about it at all. I don't like having problems. It's like an itch on my skin, an irritation where I want to solve it now. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to complain about it. I don't want everyone to know that I have tons of these things that come up, which I absolutely do have problems that come up. I want to solve it and then move on with my life.
But as in so many of our podcast topics, you have to personally know yourself and the people in your family. And this is what that aspect of the path, the relationships in the family, that individual piece, like each of our kids handles problems differently. The other day, the kids were helping out at church, and one of my kids was a little disappointed with the role he was put in for that day. And I think I was like a little bit too harsh on him. And I'm learning as I'm going, okay, next time this comes up, I need to make sure I handle it this way because of his type of personality. He wasn't ready to hear this message. To summarize that, I think we have to be in touch with how each of the people in our family, the adults and the kids, respond to problem solving. Some kids are ready to solve the problem immediately, or depending on the problem too. Other kids need to sit with it a little bit. So I think it's important to have an awareness of that in your family as well, and not just assume that if you came to me and you're like, I just like to solve the problem, I don't like talking about it. Like sometimes I need to talk about it.
Oh,
I know you don't like it,
it's the worst. Sometimes we gotta do it though.
but he
Man, that
will.
stinks.
But you'll listen to me for that. Let's just say 10 minutes. For that 5 to 10 minutes because I need that, and then we laugh about it. But we have to know that what the other person needs, and that takes some selflessness, that takes knowing love languages, that takes just being aware of how each person in your family just is, what their nature is.
A tactic for kids, especially at a younger age, that Mel did a very good job on, and Mel, maybe you can share where you learned it, is that when you put a kid in timeout for behavior that is detrimental to the family, Mel would say, when you're ready to talk about it, come over and get me. It wasn't like you have to sit on the step for 20 minutes based on the severity of the infraction. So you got to sit there till you calm down so we can have a conversation about it. And that was the point of the timeout.
And again, I think when I first started doing that, I had heard the word timeout. Okay, so do put your kid in timeout for 2 minutes. And then you can do 3 minutes if they're 6 years old. And I tried to do that regimented thing and it didn't work because my first son he had a harder time settling down. Sometimes it would take longer. So I changed it in several ways. I ended up calling it the thinking spot, first of all, because timeout to me, it didn't quite give the perception of what it's supposed to be about. It's supposed to be a time to calm down and think. It can even be calm down spot or something. But I called it the thinking spot and I made a sign. And then I ended up telling them, when you're ready, then you can come talk to me. Or you have to let me know and I'll come to you, and they have to stay on the step. And I did that because for my oldest, it might take 10 minutes till he's ready. For my middle child, it might take 30 seconds for him to be ready. Now, sometimes they learned, oh, I can get out of this spot quicker if I just say I'm ready. But as a parent, you know if they're being sincere or not.
If they're joking about it like that, they're usually ready to talk about it, though. I remember our oldest would be like so grumpy, like right in the face. It was like a switch after whatever period of time. It'd be different amounts. Okay, I'm ready. And like just say it in a normal voice. Like, you were just 5 seconds ago ready to explode. And now you're good to go.
And for some kids, looking at a timer might be helpful to them. Like they know in 2 minutes, I got to figure this out and calm down. For other kids, it might be better to let them decide how much time they need. And this really I think that it teaches them self-control. It teaches them to listen to their body. It's okay if I need 5 minutes and you need 30 seconds. They're just different. And I would add to my thinking spot periodically too. Like one of the kids would calm down better if I had some calm down toys there. So it really depends, again, on the kid and what you're trying to accomplish. But to try to squeeze it just into one category didn't work. And that's why I like that you said step 2, look for resources. Because let's say step 1, can I solve this? Okay, I'm going to try a 2-minute timeout and it's still not working. So then you're like, what can I do next to try to find what other people have done? And that's when I got the idea to call it the thinking spot and to not have a timer.
Yeah, let's shift over to step 2. So we just covered step 1. What can we do about it and how can we help our kids with our abilities and skills get guided through it? Step 2 is, who can I ask that may have done it? Now, I am very specific with this step. When you ask someone, bring something to the table to narrow the discussion. Don't ask, how do I discipline my kids? That's way too open-ended of a question. You're asking a friend or a colleague or a mentor to do a tremendous amount of lifting to solve your problem. Instead, you could say, my child had this behavior. I tried this. It didn't seem to work. And I tried that. I'm thinking about trying this other thing now. What do you think of that? And would you try anything else? So now you actually have something to discuss. But you eliminated a couple options that didn't work. You give an idea and you're getting their feedback on your idea versus giving them the problem and making it theirs. There's an analogy in business in the Harvard Business Review, one of the most popular articles. I think it was written in the 70s, and they used the analogy of monkeys on the back. And how the analogy goes is someone walks into the boss's office, says, I have this problem. That's them taking a monkey and putting him on the desk. And the goal as the manager is make sure you teach them skills so they leave with all their monkeys. Otherwise, you're going to have people stopping by and dropping them in your office all day long, and all of a sudden you're stuck with all the problems and they have none, and you're overwhelmed. And that happens because they're not leaving empowered with a way to solve the problem. You have a discussion about it. They share, I'm going to try this and that. Okay, I would try this one first and maybe just tweak it a little bit. Go ahead and give it a shot. And then you give them an ability to solve the problem and send them on their way. That's what you need to do when you approach people. Respect their time in a way that you've done a little bit of the work yourself. I try not to, honestly. This sounds harsh. Help people who are unwilling to help themselves. Even coming with an idea or a thought to the table, or elimination of an idea like, hey, I tried this, it didn't really work. What should I try now? Frame it in a way that shows that you put a little bit of effort into it versus you're helpless and you're just drowning and this person needs to swoop in and save you. You're not going to get as good help that way.
Yeah, you still have to own the problem. You can't just hand it off and expect everything to be okay. It's almost like you're looking for someone else to blame. If it doesn't go well, this person didn't lead me. They led me astray. And I do think nowadays there's definitely too many resources. So like sometimes Googling something isn't great because you almost get more overwhelmed. So that's why I think it's important to think about who your resources are. Back when the kids were little, I think where I first got the timeout thinking spot idea was from like the Super Nanny. Because that was like a TV show.
Yeah.
That was a TV show. And then she had a book that had come out, and I didn't agree with everything in her book, but there was a particular thing that I appreciated the timeout. I appreciated something about when the kids go to bed and they keep getting up. So that was I tried to research a bit on my own. And then as friends started having babies, I would discuss with them potentially. But there needs to be this ownership of the problem because it is tempting. I think in human nature, it's tempting to want to pass the monkey off.
And this is how you teach it to your kids is give them a number so that they understand, hey, I would love to help you solve what's going on. Can you come with 2 suggestions, please? The kids might, they're always trying to buy things, and we always have to keep them in line. Can you give me 2 reasons why it's really important? You would like to do that now? Or 2 other options that you could do instead of it. And maybe you can still get that thing, but let's take this searchlight and go side to side and let's check the other options first before we make a decision to solve this problem. Give them a number to aim for, because in this second step of who do I ask, you want to be that person for your kids. And you're going to teach them how to ask for help by letting them help themselves first. They are going to be much more empowered and live more confident lives if they can come up with a couple solutions versus just, this happened, what do I do? I don't know, what's a couple of things that you think you could do? What have you seen other people do? Ask questions first when those roles are reversed and you're being asked for help. It is a critical role as a parent to role model this because I see so many people hit the workforce and they have no idea how to solve a problem. And I feel bad for them because they're essentially helpless and they're not going to go very far if they can't continually solve problems.
I do think that it's almost our nature to want to solve our problems for our kids. I've had to fight that because if they come to me with something and I know I can solve it, I can just be like, okay, do this. But with kids, you need to also teach them the skill. So like I may know the answer to what you're looking for here, but I want you to go figure out 2 ways and then come back to me. So the example that keeps coming to mind is like after dinner, Henry will be like, I want some kind of dessert. What should I have? And then it's okay. He's been really good about looking stuff up on YouTube. He follows different chefs and stuff. So he will actually go and find 2 different recipes, bring them to me, and we'll see if I have the ingredients for one of them. So I think that's just a simplistic example, but it's like those simple ones will then translate into when they're older, because you're right. It's a life skill to be able to ask the question, what can I do? And then if you don't know, to try to find a resource versus just passing it off like we said. So with kids, I think these examples come up all the time. Okay, the example of Everett not being able to refill his water bottle and just like making someone else do it. And I'm like, you know what? You're old enough now. You can manage. What can you do? How can you solve? That's what we would say to them. How can you solve this problem? And I guess we could have added the number thing, which we could do now. Or I wasn't doing that when he was so little. But I can't open the bottle. Okay, how can you solve that problem? I can have somebody open it. Great. So then he would ask me to open it, and then he was able to fill it. So we still have that same process. He can fill it. I have to open it because it's like a really difficult screw top to open. And I think that's the important thing, if anything, to ask that question. How can you solve this problem? What ideas do you have? Where can you go for help? And get them thinking, because my nature is to just solve it. I want to just be like, let me do it. I'll just do it. It'll be faster,
Especially
it'll
in
be
the
quicker.
kitchen,
And the
get
kid,
all
I know.
antsy.
So like now, for example, if they like, when they have this little lemonade powder they pour into their cup, a little bit always spills. Or like your, what's it called? Like supplements and stuff. They're always like powdery stuff on this one counter. Now, my nature is to just go wipe it up. But what I'm trying to do is teach them, like, what can you do to solve this problem? It's almost funny. And they're like, wipe it. Right, okay, what's next? Like, you have to wet the towel. You need to wipe it down. Then they just want to throw the towel back. I'm like, no, you have to rinse it and wring it out. And I know it's a silly example, but seriously, your kids are going to live in a home on their own. They have to know how to wipe a counter. Like, it's all those skills come into play. And this is not about keeping a kitchen clean. This is about them thinking through how to solve a problem. Even if it's not a problem that's recognizable to them, they don't see the powder. I see the powder, but it still needs to be handled. And instead of just solving it myself, I push myself to ask them to figure out how to do it.
You want to teach kids more empathy, have them understand how them shortcutting things creates problems for other people. If you throw that in Mel's example, you take the cloth, throw it in the sink, somebody has to wring it out. You've created a problem for someone else. Try to sit in someone else's shoes that now has to clean up an additional piece of your mess that you made. And having those conversations unemotionally are absolutely critical. If you get nitpicky, this is where I see so many people get wrong. They know what to do. They get sassy about it with their kids. Their kids get sassy back and it spirals. They roll their eyes. Oh, I can't believe you did this again. And the kid's like, whatever. Like, and they just storm off. You knew what to do. Just say it in a calmer tone. Most parents do the right thing. Sometimes it's just communicated ineffectively.
And we love the phrase constant gentle pressure. Another example. Yesterday I walked, like everybody had gone downstairs. The boys' rooms are downstairs. I walk into the kitchen and there's like a variety of interesting things Logan left on the table. Because I could tell he had been emptying his backpack that he took to his little office job he has. And so I called down to him and I'm like, Logan, please come up here. And on his way up, he's like, I probably forgot some stuff. Because we've been doing this process for a while now where he'll leave stuff around and then I call him up and he's got to go figure out what it is that he left around. But the point is, I could very easily get angry about it because like I'm sick of cleaning up after everybody because it becomes my problem. But we've been doing this for a while now, and if I keep my tone of voice calm and gentle, and even if we make it funny, he can come up and he recognizes right away, oh yeah, I forgot to do this, I forgot to do that. And he actually apologized yesterday because I think he had intended to do it and then just got off track. But that constant gentle pressure is very powerful. It might take weeks, months, years for certain skills, but they start picking up on it.
Yeah, excellent point. And the third one is what kind of resource? So it's similar to the second one. The second one is a personal resource, but I want to separate it so that we could go over how to ask for help. And the third one is using a resource like you're listening to right now, the Strong Family Project podcast. And we have the 7 steps of the path for you at strongfamilyproject.com, where you can download some frameworks. You can have a lot of other resources. Belle mentioned a book that she read before when they were kids. You'll get a lot of books or resources when kids are particularly young. And then you can lean on something like this when they get older. Just take what you need, little bits and pieces, so you have a toolbox of ways to solve problems. But there are books out there. The reason why I want to go through those steps and the true value at the end is, yes, it'll teach empathy. Yes, it'll teach them confidence that they have value to solve their own problems, which is incredibly powerful. And yes, it'll teach them resiliency to understand that there is a wide swatch of problems that they can solve. But at its core, we want to understand why we have learned to helplessness in some situations and help them avoid helplessness in certain situations.
Yeah, the last thing I want is for them to grow up and feel like they don't know what they're doing or that they can't solve their own problem. Because I think we can all, I've mentioned this many times, I think, on the podcast. I don't like to think about them being grown. But if I force myself to, I want them to be able to not feel helpless and not go into a situation with friends or in anything in the workplace with their own family and feel helpless. They need to have steps. And we always want to empower them because everybody brings something else to the table. Sometimes at family meetings, someone will bring up a problem and we refer it back to the kids. What do you guys think? That's another place. If you're doing some of the steps of the path, if not all of them, that's another place where this can be modeled. we always model it because there's some kind of problem tends to come up during the family meeting. So we just put it back to them. Oh, recently we had Henry write out a contract of how he's going to use this one particular app that lets him talk to friends. And at first he put it off for a couple of days. So I don't think he knew what he was doing. And we're like, hey, look up some contracts online people have done, or what are some things. I would ask him questions. I could have very easily just said, write this down. This is what I want it to look like. But instead I wanted him to put thought into it. And just that exercise of him having to think about it, him having to type it up and edit it and show it to us, that showed him that he's capable. That's really what the skill is. It was also, of course, it was about getting the end goal of that contract being set, but it's really about teaching him the skill of how to come up with it without us just hand-holding, because I tend to hand-hold, and I've had to work on that as the kids get older.
There's this semi-funny Instagram that goes around because it is very true. I've seen a lot of quote unquote influencers redo the same thing, which always is a pet peeve of mine, but I guess it's good because I see one of them, I have no idea who actually started it, but it's like questions that kids ask mom and versus questions that kids ask dad, and like, mom, you do my laundry, mom, where's my book bag, mom? And then the dad walks in and says, dad, where's mom? And it's all right, that's funny because it's true, but a lot of times they don't come to me first because I'm going to have this talk with them like we're having now. Oh, sounds like you have a problem. What are some solutions that you come up with? And they roll their eyes. They're hoping they can trick Mel into solving it for them. Sometimes she does. She knows where everything is. And sometimes she doesn't. We go through the steps. And sometimes they do bring other things to me. But it all started back with the I'm bored statement. It's not even a question. I'm bored. Okay, who owns that problem? It's my problem. Okay, what's some things that you can do to solve that problem? And so that's a good way to have it. It's who owns the problem. Yeah, sometimes, that really sounds like a you problem, but I'm here to help. And let them understand they're accountable for solving that themselves. If you don't want to give me I'll give you a time in right now. Why don't you go count the rocks in the driveway? Like, if you want me to solve boredom, that's going to keep you busy. No, I'll solve it myself. So they don't like to have those conversations with me.
Even that's true. Even like that basic, when they're real little, you want kids to feel some sense of control. So you give them options. So they'll say, I'm hungry. And then it's okay. Would you like a banana or a spoonful of peanut butter? So sometimes you have to give options if they're struggling to come up with it. Or of course, they're going to say something like, I want a bowl of chocolate chips.
So, okay, do you want broccoli or a banana?
That's what you say, broccoli always.
Yeah, I'll just have the banana. Okay.
But
I'm glad we could solve that problem together.
I think that's like a very common parenting tactic when kids are little, to help them to feel control, because so much is out of their control when they're little. And even with older kids, if they're struggling to find some solutions, you can give them options. Don't just say, do this. If they've gone through some of this process, you can say, here's 2 things. You get to choose which one and try it out. That's another way to help them feel some control, help them to feel more confident in their ability to make choices and problem solve.
All right, we've given away a ton on this episode in terms of frameworks. We reviewed a few from previous episodes. There's a lot in here. I suggest even giving this one a re-listen because this is something critical that you can both use for yourself and teach your family and use in the workplace and throughout a lot of daily interactions to help people elevate themselves around you and to improve the quality of everyone's life. Get rid of that learned helplessness because you ultimately are accountable for your life. And when you have this toolbox, you certainly have the skills to enact it, and you certainly have the skills to solve speed bumps in your house. I don't want to call them problems. They're just like little speed bumps. You just solve it. I want to thank you for listening to the episode. If you found it valuable, do share it with a couple parents. You know what? I'm going to back that off. Share with one. Just find one parent, share the episode with if you found this valuable. The full steps of the Strong Family Path are at strongfamilyproject.com. Talk to you on the next episode.